Hello, in this lecture you will learn how to create Stripe payments, how to establish everything for that using .NET Core. In this case we will be using a MVC web application project, and this is going to be a backend approach. So everything will happen on the backend. There's not going to be any messiness with the Stripe elements and all that. It's going to be a very simple, very customizable approach. So let's start with some cleanup. First of all, let's go to controllers, and in this case we will have a home controller, and let's use it. Let's use it as best as we can. Let's just delete some of the stuff. Actually, let's leave it, and let's do another route actually. So let's do public, and let's do some return. Let's say dynamic. Let's do dynamic return, and let's do task in this case. Let's do task, and let's do dynamic. Do dynamic just like that, and let's call it pay. Pay just like that, and let's create a sort of static route here. Let's do route. Let's do route, and let's do pay. Okay, so once it goes to pay, it's good to pay. Now, if you're not familiar with web APIs, you can watch the course on web APIs. It's listed below. And now let's create a little model for ourselves. Let's expand that. Let's do add. Let's add a class. So we will actually need three things in the model. Let's do a model, let's say payment model, just like that. Okay, let's add, and here let's do four things we need. We need four things. So first of all, we will need the card number, which is going to be surprisingly a string. It's not a number, it's a string. And you'll see why it is a string. So let's do a string, and then let's call it card number. Let's say card number, just like that. Let's do get set, and we'll be good to move on. Okay, let's do get set, just like that. Now let's actually copy all that. There's no need to write it all. Do several more things, and we will actually we need 5 of them. We need 5 of them because the date is a separate entity, the month and the year, that is. Okay, so let's do month, and then let's do year. Let's do year. We'll change the types later. Let's do year, and then we need the CVC, obviously, for the credit card, and then finally we need the value. Now, interestingly, the value is not going to be double as you might expect. It is going to be in fact an integer, meaning that the value is in cents. So let's do an integer here, and then we will need to do the CVC, and let's do a string. Let's do a string in this case. Now let's do the year. And the year is an integer. So you see, I'm making all these unusual, perhaps, type arrangements, and you will see why. You will see why exactly. So we have the payment model. We are good to go with that. Now what we should do is create additional class. Normally you would want to handle these payments in a class library, but we won't waste time with that. Let's keep it simple, and let's create a payment class. So let's do a new class, and let's call it, say, make payments. Make payment on payment. Let's do. Okay, let's do add. And now this is where the interesting part begins. So we will not be calling the raw APIs, although you could do that. You could look at the reference and you would waste a lot of time. They have a great library. It's absolutely amazing. It's absolutely flawless. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It's very easy to read, and they have somewhat of a description of it as well. A decent one, that is. And let's right click on that. Let's go to NuGet Packages. NuGet Packages, and let's browse, and let's do Stripe. Stripe.net it's called. Stripe.net, just like that. Let's install that. Latest stable, of course. Always go for stable. Don't risk it with the previews. It's not worth it. And by the way, we are using .NET Core 3.0 in this application. So let's do OK. It's all fine, good to go. Let's move on. It should install in a second. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Now let's go to make payment and let's start with it. So normally you may want to have some build up, some construction on this one, but to make this simple, again, everything will be simple in this lecture. We will do just a simple static method. Okay, a static method. So let's do public, let's do static, and then let's do async. Where's my async? Public static, not string it is. Static, async, and let's do task. Let's do task so that we could have waited on the action as well. So let's do that, and let's do dynamic. It will be quicker, and you'll see why we need a dynamic later. So let's call it pay async. Pay async, just like that. Pay async. Okay, we have that, and now let's get to the Stripe. Let's get to the Stripe, and we need the configuration. We need to deal with the configuration first, but let's engulf it in this try and catch statement. Let's do try catch exception. Let's put an E. It will be easier to see if there's an error. And first of all, what you want to do is set the API key. You need to set the API key. I will later show you where and how to find it. So let's do Stripe configuration. We need Stripe configuration, but first we need Stripe. Okay, and then you do Stripe configuration. Stripe configuration, just like that. But since we are using only Stripe here, there's no point in keeping it like that, writing it all the time. Let's do using Stripe, just like that. Okay, and then Stripe configuration. And then in the Stripe configuration, you do set API key. So it's a sort of a static value. You don't need to do anything else with it. Okay, let's do set API key, just like that. And you'll add a string. We will add the actual string later. Okay. So, as you can see, this one is now obsolete. You can use the key API key now. Okay. So let's try that instead, just in case it doesn't work anymore at some point. Let's do API key, and that's gonna be a setter, as it says. Okay, let's see if that works, and it works perfectly. As you can see, you have a string API key, works perfectly. It's the same thing, it's just that the previous one got deprecated, so it's best to avoid those things, although it should work perfectly as it is. So now let's get to something a bit more interesting. Now, to do the payment, you first need to have this token of a payment, and then you use the token to actually create a charge. You create a charge, and you can choose between capturing and not capturing, just holding. If you have some booking, perhaps you might want to hold it and then charge it or something like that. But in this case, we'll just do charge right away, capture right away rather, and that is by default. By default, you capture right away. Okay, so let's do the token. let's do variable, the options token, just like that, equals new token create options, and then we will put these interesting variables into it. So first of all the card, okay, so let's do card equals new, just like that, credit card options. So you see you have token create options, and then you have card. Now you may know this, Stripe has some other options of payment, but we will not be getting into that. So obviously for those other ones you would not use card, you would use something else instead. So let's do credit card now, and this is where we will need our variables. Okay, we will need them. So we don't have them, we don't actually have them yet, so let's add some of them. And what I will do, you may notice this may seem a bit interesting and curious for you, so I'm going to actually list the variables. Now you may think to yourself, why am I not using that payment object, that model, payment model? Well, the answer is simply that you would need to refer to it if it was in the class library, this make payment class. You would need to refer to it, and generally you don't want to do that anymore. You want to use the model in the main application, and then you kind of separate the variables when you go to the class library. Okay, so let's do it like that. And we had, say, string, then card number we had, string card number, and then I believe we had integer, month perhaps, and then we had integer year, then string CVC, just like that, and then we have a value, the amount, the value, whichever word you prefer, and that is integer because remember it is in cents. In fact. So now let's do number here in the card. So number is obviously credit card number or card number. So let's do number, and that is the value. Or rather not, it's actually the card number. What am I doing? The card number. Okay, we have that. And then next in line is the EXP month, or it could be year. Let's do month because we have month and then year in these parameters. So let's do expiration month. That is expiration month equals month, just like that. Okay, now let's do year, EXP year, expiration year equals year, just like that. And then finally we have CVC equals CVC, just like that. So you may also have noticed that there are some other options, like for example you have address line, address city, country, and then state, and then you have extra params. So you can actually use some of these extra parameters, just the ones that are listed by default, just to verify. If you need some extra verification, perhaps you have some platform that takes really large payments, so you might want to do that, although it is unnecessary. Okay, so let's delete that. CVC, we have it all, and we need a semicolon here, just like that. Okay, now let's move on to the creating of a token. So we need to create, we kinda created the variables for it, the structure for it, now we need to create. So let's do variable, and let's call it service token. Service token equals new token service. Token service. That's why we call it service token. Okay, just like that. And then you need token, stripe token. Let's call it stripe token equals service token create. And you may have noticed we also have create async, and since we do have an asynchronous method here, why not use it? Let's do create async then. And then you have these token create options. Obviously, token create options, we already established that. We have options token, just like that. It's good to go. And now let's get to the credit card. Let's get to the credit card. We need to await this. We need to await. Wait, just like that. We have it. And let's get to the charge. To the charge rather. We will need to charge. So let's do variable and let's do options in this case. Let's use the simple names. We used the difficult ones previously. We can use the simple ones now. Let's do options equals new charge create options. Charge create options, just like that. So you could call it charge options instead if you prefer that. Okay, we have that, charge options, that's it. Now we need to set a few things here. Let's do amount. Let's do amount equals, and we have the value, so that's the value. And again, the stripe uses integers, or rather cents. It doesn't use the decimal values. It uses cents, and I would actually recommend storing your money in the databases using integers rather than decimal values, all those doubles, floats, and all that kind of stuff. So we have amount, value, and that's it. Now we need the currency. The currency equals, and that's going to be USD. There are some other additional options if you need them. Okay, so let's do description now. Little description, why not? And let's call it test. And in production, what I would suggest doing, if you have some local payment ID, I would suggest doing, or rather using that ID in the description. So let's say you write payment ID, or if you have something very specific, you might write payment for this and that product. Although we shouldn't keep those descriptions too long. Okay, so let's move on. And finally, the most important part. Well, the value may be on that level as well. Well, let's do now source ID. Source ID, or rather source. Okay, so we have the source in this case. Let's see what the source is. Charge create options. A payment source to be charged. So what's going to be here is simply that stripe token. We need to refer that stripe token that we have. Stripe token, let's see where it is. And we will need to have its ID. The ID. See if that works. It should work perfectly. So you see, the source is the card. So basically the source is what are you using to pay or to cover this charge. And we have a credit card as our source, as our token option here. Okay, so that's all perfect and ready to go. Now all that's left to do is create a charge service and then create the charge. Okay, so let's do that. Let's do variable, let's do service, just like that. Service equals new charge service. Charge service it has to be. Okay, just like that. Let's construct that. And then we have the actual charge. Let's do charge. Just like that. Let's do charge. Let's call it charge actually. It will be easier to read. Equals service. And then create. And you can actually, again, create a sync. So let's try to create a sync. See if it doesn't require anything in addition. Okay, so let's do that. And we simply use options. Now, mind you, these options are the charge options, not the token options. So remember, you at this point, you are using these charge options and you have forgotten about the token altogether. So let's await that. Let's await that, and we do have our charge. We do in fact have our charge. And now all that's left to do is to handle the checks for it being paid or unpaid or something wrong. Something went wrong. So let's do if, and then let's do charge, charge, and paid. So if it's paid, this is a boolean by the way. If it's paid, it's all fine. We can actually return. We will be returning text. Now you might want to encode it, but it's actually easier to just use text, and you'll see why. You will see why in the moment. Okay, so let's do return. Say success. Success. And then else. Else. Return. Failed. Let's do failed. Failed. Okay. Now, you might also do booleans or something like that, because we do use dynamics, so you might separate that like that. But the reason it's easier to do text is because the exception can actually be used as a error message. And you'll see that when we will be testing. So let's do message, or rather, let's do return in this case. Let's do return. And let's do E and message. That's it. You see, these messages are very, very convenient, and you won't actually save anything on the bandwidth on these payments, most likely, unless you have some really micro payments, always occurring payments, but that is very unlikely. So just use these texts and it will be a lot easier to deal with. Now we can get to the testing part of it all, and we start with the dashboard of the Stripe. And as you can see, I am in the developer section and in the API keys. Now in the API keys you'll find a publishable key and then the secret key. The publishable one would be used in the client side development. We are not doing that, so we will need to use the secret key. And the secret key has to be very secret, otherwise you will be in trouble. So you just copy that, and you need to hide it. It is actually hidden. It has been uncovered previously. But if you need to change it, if it got exposed for some reason, something happened to it, you just click on that and you just roll key. Roll key means change key. It may sound a bit weird, but it is what it is. So we copied it. Now let's go to the Visual Studio and let's put it in somewhere. Let's put it in. Okay, just like that. In the API key. That's our secret. Remember, it's a secret test key. You use the secret key. Now, but we have the key, we have all that ready, and we need perhaps some front end. But for the front end, we will use this gray tool. It's called advanced. So we won't actually be building a front end. There's no need for that. We are testing an API after all. So let's just do ARC. This is kind of like Postman if you are familiar with that, but this is a lot more simple to use. It's a lot more straightforward. Basically, all you need to do is create your request and you can send it. There's no need to write all those files, no preparation really required. So we have that, and now let's do the handling. Let's do the handling here in the home. in the home. So we will be using our model. We will be using our model. So let's do return first of all. Return. That's gonna be make payment. Make payment and pay async. Pay async. We need the async here and await here, just like that. And now we put in our model in here. Here is a model, models, and we have payment model. Let's see, call it PM payment model, just like that, and pass it on here. I wanted to say, but we aren't doing that because remember, it wouldn't be a good idea if you had a class library. So here the first thing we have is card number. We have a card number, and then we have month, and then year. There's the PM month. Okay, and then PM year, just like that, and then PM CVC, and finally PM value, just like that. Okay, so now let's set them in the great tool advanced. It's called. It's a rather strange name, but let's do body. And body content type is going to be, let's see, form data, multi-part form data. We will need a file. We will need something else. Let's add text, another one, and another one, and another one, I believe. So first of all, we have card number. We have card number. Okay, just like that. We have card number. Let's place it right here, and you'll see where we get the properties from. Let's do month then. Field name month, and then year. Okay, year, just like that, and then CVC. And just put it in here, and then finally the value. So we have all of them. And now we need those properties. So actually be a random one. It can actually be a random one. It doesn't matter. But the testing card numbers you find in Stripe docs testing. So you find them in documentation, and you will find all of them that you need. So in this case, let's do something simple. Let's test with MasterCard. Let's copy that. Let's put it in here. In the card number, we need to put it. Okay. And then, other than that, we don't actually need anything from here. The month and the year for testing has to be valid ones. Unless, of course, you're testing for the non-valid ones. Okay, so let's do 12 of 2020. And then the CVC number, again, it could be any random 3-digit number. And then the value, let's say 10,000. Now remember, 10,000 will only be 100. 10,000 will only be 100. Now let's actually launch this. Let's launch this beast. And we will copy the URL, all our routes as well. We have a route basic pay. It will be one easy to remember. It will take a second to launch probably. Let's copy that whilst it is launching. And let's put it in here. Just like that. And let's do pay. Let's see, it seems to have launched perfectly. Okay, let's now send it. See what happens. And it is a success. In fact, it's a jolly great success. Okay. Unfortunately, it won't be that for long because we will try to mess with these values. Let's do 2001. It has expired a long time ago, but we'll give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And as you can see, we get that text exception. Remember, this is an exception, and it says your card's expiration year is invalid. So that works perfectly, right? So let's get back to 220. 220, let's get back. And let's try something else. Let's say wrong card number. Let's just do like that, okay? Let's try that, see how that works. The card number is not a valid credit card number. So again, all that works perfectly and everything else works perfectly as well. And you can find more of these fail charge examples in the testing section. We actually provide those credit card numbers with all these different issues that you may want to test for. And with that, we will conclude this lecture.